You can start whenever you're ready.
All right. All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be able to present as part of this series. I was happy to get the invitation and to be able to come and tell you guys a little bit more about conservation of marine mammals. So I work with the National Marine Mammal Foundation. We're based out of San Diego, California, and our mission is to improve and protect life for marine mammals, humans, and our shared oceans through science, service, and education. So we work on projects having to do with marine mammal conservation all around the world. And we've got a large team of people. We're a nonprofit, but we have about 150 employees, and we work on a variety of different projects with all kinds of different marine mammals. So the first part of my presentation today is going to be telling you a little bit more about some of the different projects we have going on, and then the second part is going to focus directly on one very important issue involving the endangered Vaquita porpoise. So a big part of the reason why we are able to go out into the field and work with wild marine mammals and be able to understand and directly work on their health care is that we also work with the Navy Marine Mammal Program in San Diego, California. The National Marine Mammal Foundation provides veterinary support and animal care to the Navy. So working with these animals on a daily basis gives us the tools and expertise that we can then apply to the wild. And at the Navy, the animals are trained to participate in their own health care. So they are taught husbandry behaviors as part of their daily routine that allow us to check up on their health. So you can see we have them come up, we can do routine health exams, we have an extensive preventative medicine program that allows us to catch diseases very early as we're working with these animals, and then we can translate what we learn to wild animal health. We can also translate it to human health. So believe it or not, dolphins and humans have a lot in common, especially when it comes to our bodies and our health care. So this is from an article in Tufts Veterinary Medicine magazine. And this little graphic here shows some of the ways that dolphins and humans are alike. But the biggest way is that we both have very large brains for our body size. So dolphins, next to humans, have the largest brain compared to their body size, and big brains need a lot of sugar to keep them running. So your neurological cells need actual sugar to be able to run. So in both humans and dolphins, our red blood cells actually carry sugar on them, and this is unique to cetaceans and primates. And it's an adaptation to make our brains be able to run fast all the time. The other similarity between dolphins and people is the types of diseases we can get. So we've discovered that viruses discovered in dolphins are often closely related to those that infect people. And so by studying what happens in them, we can learn more and translate that to human medicine. So this slide is of a California sea lion. California sea lions, for the past 5 years or so, have had several episodes of unusual mortality events, which means that very high numbers compared to normal are stranding along California's beaches. Based on all the current science, we think that this is because of changes in their prey distribution, especially linked to El Nino events that have happened in the last couple years. But thousands of juvenile sea lions were coming up onto the beaches around California. And so our staff went out to the rehabilitation centers and the rescue centers and helped care for these stranded young sea lions, who most of them were not yet at the age where they should have been weaned from their mother. So they were very young. And we helped assess them and determine if they could be rehabilitated and released back into the wild. Another project that we at the foundation have been working on is working with dolphins in the Gulf of Mexico after the Deepwater Horizon oil spill of 2010. So as you might remember, that oil spill was the largest in the history of the United States, and it had major impacts on the local environment and economy. And we're still studying the impacts almost 8 years out from the oil spill. And so we specifically are looking at the effect on cetaceans. And what we found is that post-oil spill, the reproductive rate, so the number of pregnant females that were able to successfully deliver a healthy calf was only about 20%. And in nearby areas that were not affected by the oil spill, the number of females that gave birth to a healthy calf was about 85%. So the contamination from the oil had a very big impact on their ability to reproduce. And they estimated that about 10 years after the oil spill, it would lead to about a 50% reduction in the population of dolphins in this area. So our work with the foundation involves going out and doing routine health assessments with these animals and trying to figure out what it is that is causing this decrease in reproductive success. And we found that it's largely related to maternal health of the animals. So they have chronic lung problems, adrenal gland problems, which means they have trouble producing the right levels of hormones in their bodies, and we're even finding that they're having lingering cardiotoxicity problems, which means that they have heart murmurs and they're having heart issues. So these are all conditions in the mothers that we think are leading to failure of the calves. Another project we are working on is working with endangered beluga whales in Alaska. So these are the endangered Cook Inlet beluga whales, and we were asked to come and do surveys of the local environmental health, specifically water quality, and also sound production in the Cook Inlet as a result of local development. Try to monitor for that noise pollution and water pollution, and produce reports on how it could be affecting the local beluga whales. Here, a little closer to home, here on the west coast of the United States, we work with elephant seals, and we've actually determined a way to measure wild animal hearing. So based on the work that we've done with hearing in Navy dolphins, we've developed methods to test a wild animal's hearing by testing their brain waves as they're exposed to certain sounds. It's exactly the same way that they test newborn babies' hearing when they're in the hospital before they even go home. But basically they're able to see if the brain is lighting up in certain regions when they hear sounds, and in that way they're able to tell if they're able to hear. This has been very important for the rehabilitation facilities because they're now able to test marine mammal hearing before re-releasing animals into the wild, and that could greatly improve their success upon re-release. In the Pacific Northwest, we're also doing some work with the resident killer whale population. These are southern resident killer whales who are one of the most endangered subpopulations of killer whales. And so as part of our work, what we're doing is we're developing a database to that allows all of the researchers that are working on this project to put their data in a central location in order to be able to use it to track their health better and to be able to come up with better solutions. So our software programming team has actually developed a database tracking system for all of their health metrics that then is being deployed and used by the various researchers in the field. And last but not least, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing with endangered seals and sea lions in Peru. So this is at a reserve called the Punta San Juan Reserve in Peru. It's a very biodiverse area, and as part of that, the veterinarians go down there and they do routine health assessments. So we send some of our veterinarians to help come and provide the expertise needed to do these health assessments on a yearly basis. And last but not least, kind of this main theme for today's talk, I want to tell you a little bit about our work with the Vaquita porpoise in Mexico. The National Marine Mammal Foundation was asked by the government of Mexico to be part of a large team of organizations that to work on helping to save this critically endangered species. The idea was to try to bring a few of them into human care in order to protect them temporarily from the threat of illegal fishing and gill nets until we were able to clean up their habitat. And I'll get a little bit more into why this was happening and what we think we can do now. This particular effort gained a lot of publicity, and we're hoping to ride this wave of increased public awareness. You can see even Leonardo DiCaprio has been working to try to raise awareness on this issue to be able to finally get the attention and the resources needed to be able to combat the illegal fishing trade. And then a little bit more about what I do. As a big part of our mission here at the foundation is to take the knowledge that we have and the research we're doing and to teach students and our community about the science that we're learning about. So this is a big part of our mission, and it's very important to us to be able to reach out. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present as part of this webinar. All right, so back to the beginning. What exactly is a marine mammal? Marine mammals are aquatic mammals that rely on the ocean and other marine ecosystems for their existence. So all marine mammals are not necessarily related directly. The kind of definition of it is just that they rely on the ocean for their well-being. So things as far as seals and whales to manatees, sea otters, and polar bears are all considered marine mammals. Today, specifically, I want to focus on some of the marine mammals that are endangered. So according to the National Marine Fisheries Service, there are 24 species of marine mammals around the world that are considered endangered. The most endangered marine mammal in the world up until very recently was the baiji, or the Chinese river dolphin. Scientists knew that the population levels of this dolphin were getting extremely low, and they gathered a big expedition to go out and try to count the number of baiji that were left. And once they got there, they did not find a single one. So the Chinese river dolphin, the baiji, was declared extinct. And this was devastating for the scientists. And after this happened, they realized that they needed to take a way more active role to prevent marine mammal extinction before it was too late. So since the extinction of the Baiji, the Vaquita porpoise, which lives in the Gulf of California in Mexico, is now considered the most endangered marine mammal in the world. It's specifically a porpoise, so porpoises are different than dolphins. There are 32 species of dolphin, and there are only 6 species of porpoise in the world. Porpoises are a little bit different than dolphins in that they don't have a long, skinny nose like a dolphin would. Their dorsal fins tend to be a little bit more prominent, and they have kind of flat teeth. And then usually they're quite a bit smaller than dolphins. So the words dolphin and porpoise aren't interchangeable, and this specifically, the vaquita, is considered a porpoise. So what does vaquita mean? Well, the scientific name for vaquita is Phocina sinus, which is from Greek and Latin, and it means porpoise, and then the sinus part of it is Latin for bay or pocket. So this literally means a porpoise that lives up in a bay, and you can see that the vaquita porpoise lives in San Felipe, which is down here in the Sea of Cortez, which is a little pocket of water that they live in a very small range right in the top of that pocket. So for us being in San Diego, this is very close to where we live. It's only about a 4-hour drive from San Diego, so it's the most endangered marine mammal, is very close to us, and for us, it's very important to take initiative to help. The common name vaquita comes from the word vaca for cow. So a vaquita literally means little cow. And just for everyone's knowledge, in porpoise, or in Spanish, the word for porpoise is marsopa. So these are little marsopas that we call them little vaquitas because they're sort of like small cows in the ocean. Another nickname for the vaquita is the panda of the sea. And part of the reason for that is that they have dark circles around their eyes, just like the panda. Another reason is that they are very charismatic animals. So like the panda, they can be used as a symbol for the problems in the environment where they live in general, and they can act as a flagship species. So in other words, a species that we can hold up and say, we need to preserve this species, and in doing so, we can hopefully help all the other animals that also live in their habitat, and we can help preserve the entire ecosystem. So the vaquita in the last 20 years has been in a lot of trouble. So in the last 20 years, the population has gone down from a little over 500 animals to the most recent estimate over a year ago now was that there were about 30 vaquitas remaining. We know there's less than that now, so they're critically endangered, and within the next year they could all be extinct unless we can prevent them from dying in fishermen's nets. And so they live in this area in the very northern region of the Gulf of Mexico. You can see in yellow stripes, that's their range. They are protected in a vaquita refuge area where it is illegal to fish at all. There's still quite a bit of illegal fishing that goes on with gill nets. And you can see the red line around the outside actually shows the gill net exclusion zone. So this is an area where all gill nets are allowed, and specifically within the vaquita refuge, you're not allowed to fish at all in an effort to try to protect these animals. So here are some pictures of the area around San Felipe. It's very sandy area because it's just at the base of the Colorado River Delta. It's very arid on the land, so it's basically a desert. But in the ocean here, there are a lot of nutrients, which means there are many, many, many different sea creatures. It's a very abundant and diverse region of sea life. This is part of the reason that it is a desirable area for the vaquita to live, but it's also the reason that there's a very strong fishing presence and community. So the picture on the left shows a beach around San Felipe with all, the big sandy open beach. The picture on the left, or on the right, shows the downtown Malecon in San Felipe and all of the fishing boats for all the local fishermen. So up on the top here I have a quote. The abundance of life here gives an exuberance, a feeling of fullness and richness. That was written in 1940 by author John Steinbeck. He and marine biologist Ed Ricketts did a trip through the Sea of Cortez in the 1940s, and they were amazed by the diversity of sea life in this area. So how do we know how many vaquita are out there still? The principal way that we know is that we send out research cruises that just look for them. So they need to wait for days when the water is very calm, and then they look through these giant binoculars that they call big eyes, and they do visual surveys. The other thing that they've started doing is taking photos so that they can create a photo ID database of the dorsal fins of the various vaquitas to try to identify individuals. Another way that we do it is through a grid of acoustic trackers called C-pods. So these are devices that record the noises, the clicks that vaquitas make, and they're anchored to the bottom of the ocean. They can take this data and they can put it into mathematical models that can estimate the number of vaquitas. So these links on the bottom here are links to some sound files. I think that we have some of the sounds available. If we could play that vaquita click noises, you can see there a series of little short bursts of clicks. Let's see if we can get that to play. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So you can see that that they don't sound exactly like dolphins. They just send out these clicks, and that's how they are able to navigate their environment and find fish. And then we can use that audio data from the environment. And basically, these C-pods collect the data for a couple months, about 4 months. Once the battery card is full or that runs out of batteries, then they can collect the C-pods and they can analyze that data, and they can put it into models like this, that it shows the relative amount of clicks that they hear in areas throughout the vaquita refuge. So the important thing about this graph is if you look at the top left, you can see in 2011 there are a lot of dark blue dots indicating that there's quite a lot of vaquita clicks that they're hearing. And as you go through the years, you can see by 2016, they're hearing a lot less. So we've been able to watch as we're hearing less and less clicks from the vaquitas. So why is this happening? Why now is there such a surge in the illegal fishing? And part of it is fishing for a fish called totoaba. Totoaba are a very large fish endemic to the Gulf of Mexico. They're about the same size as the vaquita, you can tell. They are also endangered, so it's also illegal to catch them, but they are highly valued for their swim bladders in the Asian markets. And so recently they've been catching a lot of them illegally because they can get a large sum of money for them. So there's a demand for their swim bladders. So this becomes a very complex problem because we're trying to balance the needs of the vaquita with the very real needs of the fishing community in this area. And the economic incentive that there is to go out and do this illegal fishing. It's not an easy problem. It's not like the movies where there's a good guy and a bad guy. It's a complex social problem that is at the heart of solving this issue. So the fishermen put out these nets called gill nets, which are legal in the United States, but they can still use them outside of the gill net zone in Mexico. They're used illegally within the refuge. The way they work is they set out a long net along the bottom, and any fish that swims by gets caught up in it, and then they pull it up out of the water and get all the fish. You can imagine if a vaquita got caught up in that, it would drown. So they get caught in there. They're a marine mammal. They need to come to the surface to be able to breathe. And so within a short amount of time, if they get tangled up, they will die. So totuaba fishing has always historically been very popular for sport fishing because these fish get to be so large. But as I said, more recently, they're valued for their swim bladders, which is the organ inside the fish that they can fill with air that allows them to control their buoyancy. So here are some pictures of dried out swim bladders that were confiscated by customs enforcement. So you can see of dried out swim bladders that were confiscated by customs enforcement. So you can see that these fish are caught and their swim bladders removed and dried, and then they're illegally shipped off to the Asian market. So here's a picture of the type of store where they'd be available in Asia, where they're, and mainly in China, where they're used for all kinds of different remedies. So what can we do about this? I mean, this is, like I said, this is a very complex problem, but we have hope because there have been success stories, even in the same region around California, of very, very critically endangered animals that we're able to bring back. So the first example is the gray whale. In the early 1900s, gray whales were hunted almost to extinction. And we were able to protect them by creating legal bans on catching them. And then, of course, you know, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which came later in the 1970s, worked to protect all marine mammals from large amounts of fishing. So that's the way we were able to protect the gray whale. And now their population has grown, and you can go down and go whale watching and see them living in the lagoons down around Baja. The California is another example. They were down to only about 28 individuals at one point, and the way that they were able to bring this species back from the brink of extinction is by actually bringing all the remaining birds into zoos and creating a captive breeding program. So they went from 28 individuals that they bred in zoos, and now there's over 400 condors alive, and at least half of those are flying free in the wild in California and Mexico. So this is an example of an animal that we were able to successfully handle under human care and then be able to re-release into the wild. So what we know is that vaquitas do not do well under human care. So as part of Vaquita CPR, we tried to go down there and basically catch some to try to hold them so we could keep them safe until they were able to be re-released. But we found that they did not do well in our care. And so what are we left with? How can we save the vaquita? Well, we have to take a whole ecosystem approach. We need to remove all the ghost nets from the environment, which means nets that have been abandoned and are just floating out in the water catching fish but will never be pulled up. And we need to do what we can to prevent illegal fishing. We cannot save the vaquita without saving the rest of the upper Gulf ecosystem, and that includes people. So we need to find ways to manage the fishermen, the community, and all the creatures that live in that ecosystem in order for the vaquita to survive. So we need So like I said, the vaquita is considered a flagship species. So this is a species that acts as an ambassador, an icon, or a symbol for an environment that can help raise awareness for that cause. So by saving the vaquita, we also would be able to save the totoaba and all the other animals that live in that ecosystem. So what can you do to help vaquitas? A big part of it is to eat sustainable seafood. So a great resource for that is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Card. So especially seafood that comes from the Gulf, like shrimp, make sure you're buying it from sustainable sources. Spread the word about what's going on. The more people know about this, the more we can put pressure on government and officials to take steps to legally protect the vaquitas. And promote ecotourism that is environmentally conscious. So when we go down fishing, or when we take trips down to Mexico, or even with our own area, we want to make sure that we're touring and going on a vacation in a way that supports local tourism that is doing right by the environment. And of course, we need to find ways to provide fishing equipment and gear and alternatives to fishermen in this area that do not impact the vaquitas. So if you want more information, you can go to Vaquita CPR website. There's also a great organization called Viva Vaquita that works to spread awareness of vaquita conservation. And then the San Diego Zoo Institute for Conservation Research does a great job educating and promoting the value of saving endangered species. So I'm going to finish with a quote that's also from John Steinbeck, the famous author of the book Cannery Row, and also he wrote The Log from the Sea of Cortez. And he said, "All things are one thing, and one thing is all things. Plankton, a shimmering phosphorescence on the sea, and the spinning planets and an expanding universe, all bound together by the elastic string of time. It is advisable to look from the tide pool to the stars and then back to the tide pool again." So even back in the 1940s, John Steinbeck recognized the importance of considering all creatures in the ecosystem and having a big overarching view of the system in order to protect all the animals that live within it. So this is a little video that's like a cartoon video that was made that's really cute. It was made by Vallarta Adventures, and it basically covers a lot of the same topics that I have here, but this is a great movie to share, especially with children, to teach them about the vaquita. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to play this today, but I encourage you to go on YouTube. Again, it's called Save the Vaquita by Vallarta Adventures. You can check out that video. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is that extinction is permanent. We need to do everything we can to help the vaquita right now, because humans are the problem for this species, and so we're also their only hope. So we don't know yet what things we can learn from this animal and what they have yet to teach us unless we do everything we can to save them. So here is our contact information. I'm going to go ahead and answer a few of the questions that I see typed on the screen there. So the first question is, what is your favorite marine mammal? For me, I have to say my favorite marine mammal is, I love California sea lions. They actually remind me a lot of dogs. They're very closely related to dogs. And so they kind of act, and that you can train them in a similar way. And they can just be silly and fun, and they're very fun to work with. All right, next question. What are most of the causes of extinction in marine mammals? Well, this is all over the place. In the past, it used to be hunting for their fur and for the oil in their blubber. So whales were hunted nearly to the brink of extinction by whalers in the 1800s for their oils. Sea otters were hunted for their pelts. Nowadays, the principal problems are bycatch from fishing. Noise pollution in the oceans is another big problem for marine mammals. In some places in the world, it's still legal to catch marine mammals, but I'd say the biggest impacts are the kind of secondary impacts from human pollution and industry. So let's see here. Next question. What may be some other ways of helping? I reviewed the biggest things for us, because it's very difficult, obviously, to go down and directly interact with Vaquita. There's so few and they're very far away. But in your communities, you can help spread awareness about this problem and remind people that 90% of the seafood in the United States is imported from other countries in Asia and in Mexico. And so especially shrimp we see all the time, but the majority of that seafood is coming from other countries that may not necessarily have the same standards that we do. So it's very important to eat sustainable seafood and then to help raise awareness about the plight of marine mammals, especially if you live in an area of the country that you're not by the ocean or by the beach, that the decisions that all of us make actually do impact these animals. All right, what inspired you to study marine life? I live in San Diego, California, and so I grew up surfing and spending a lot of the time at the beach. And so my direct interaction with this environment really gave me a passion at a young age to understand it. It's that direct connection, it's that emotional connection. I can't tell you how many times I've been out in the water surfing and dolphins just swim right up to me and past me, and you can't help but look at them and look at the eye and wonder what they do every day and how they're feeling and their interactions with all the other animals that they're with, and having that direct one-on-one interaction really inspires you to make it a part of your daily life. So for me, that's what it was. Let's see, is there any discussion about removing the vaquitas from the wild and moving them to zoos to save them? Yes, so they actually tried this. So the Mexican government put together a big effort, knowing that there were less than 30 vaquita left in the wild, to try to capture a few of them and hold them in big net pens within their habitat. And they put together a team of all the experts from around the world to try to do this. And they knew it was risky because there's so few of them. And they knew that some porpoises specifically do very well in captivity and some do not. And so having never been able to capture one of these animals alive, they just didn't know how they would respond. So they went down there and they were able to capture one of them, but unfortunately it did not do well. And an adult female actually died in the process. And because of that, they decided it was not worth trying to do any more, and they halted that operation. So now all of the effort is focused on trying to eliminate the risk of illegal fishing within their habitat in order to try to save them. Can all marine mammals exist in freshwater and saltwater? No, actually. Most cetaceans need to be in saltwater. They can be in freshwater for a short amount of time, but not for too long. The next question is, what are the similarities between humans and dolphins? So I mentioned a few of them, like we both have big brains, we can get similar diseases, We both have special adaptations to be able to carry glucose or sugar in our blood. There are several diseases that are called zoonotic diseases. So a zoonotic disease is one that can be transferred from people to animals or from animals to people. So you can think of swine flu or bird flu or diseases like that that veterinarians and public health researchers care a lot about. So there are a few of those types of diseases that can be spread from dolphins to people that we can both get. Typically, there isn't much interaction between dolphins and people, so this hasn't been a big issue in the past. Can any vaquitas be placed in captivity and bred? Yeah, so oh, LOL, you are answering. Okay, so yeah, if you go to the website vaquitacpr.org, you can read a little bit more about what happened with that effort. And knowing how that went, we're hoping that it can inspire and drive people even more to push for the needed regulations and effort to protect these animals in their wild habitat from illegal fishing. All right, so I think I answered all of the questions there. If anybody else has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Otherwise, you can visit our website, the National Marine Mammal Foundation. The next question is, how long have you been with the National Marine Mammal Foundation? I have been working for the National Marine Mammal Foundation for about 8 years now. I started out working in a lab that studied the genetics of viruses in marine mammals, and based on my work there, I started interacting very closely with our veterinarians, and so now I run the clinical research program here at the National Marine Mammal Foundation. How long is the gestation period for vaquitas? Is that some of the problem? Yes, so vaquitas can only produce a calf once every 2 years because their gestation period is a little over a year. So they're pregnant for a little over a year, and then they have a young calf that they're nursing for at least 6 months. So it's only once every 2 years that they are able to produce the calf, and they'll typically only produce one calf at a time. So their reproductive rate is very low, which makes it hard for them to rebound when their population dwindles to such low levels. I'm curious about, the next question is, I'm curious about the freshwater dolphin and the Amazon River. Are there any other rivers or lakes that freshwater dolphins inhabit? That is a good question. I guess the answer is I don't know. I know that some species of manatees especially can live up in kind of river estuary areas. Specifically, I don't know of other river, Amazon river dolphins. Yes, there are river dolphins in the Amazon. So you can look up about them. What made you have a passion for the National Marine Mammal Foundation? Here at the National Marine Mammal Foundation, we do such a variety of work, and I really value the kind of brave, bold approach that we take to these research projects. So we take on issues that sometimes can be tough issues in the marine mammal world, and we go out there and we do the best science we can, and we do such a wide variety of research that it's exciting every day. No, I don't think the question is, can vaquitas have twins? And I think the answer is no. They would not be able to support 2 babies at once. Has anyone tried to artificially inseminate vaquitas in the wild? No. I think it would be impossible to try to catch one and be able to hold it long enough to be able to do that. One of the things that they have done, if they find any sort of freshly dead vaquitas, or the ones that they find stranded or on the beach, or the ones that were captured as part of the rescue effort. They were able to save tissues from those and archive them at the San Diego Zoo Frozen Zoo, which is a long-term, basically biobanking facility for tissues. So I think they're looking into options for kind of in vitro reproductive work, but that's nowhere near being a possibility at this point. Does the Marine Mammal Foundation work mostly on the coast, or do they do manatee work? Right now, we don't do any work specifically with manatees. All of our work right now is in oceans mostly around the United States, but also in Mexico and up in British Columbia and Alaska. All right, well, if that's all the questions, I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar. This is an exciting venue, and I hope everybody has learned a little bit. And feel free to email us. Again, my name is Celeste Parry, if you had any other questions. Thank you.
It's awesome. You're natural. It's still listening to us?